outlets.
Lots of stuff to talk about, Leo, on the other side of the country as usual.
Thank you very much, man. Always great to chat.
Listen to East plus West. Available now exclusively for Patreon subscribers. Sign up for just $4 a month. Head to patreon.com/SIXNewsAU.
Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on 6 News, here on SpinCheck Live. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Lots of breaking news off the top of the hour for you right now. First of all, news.com.au reporting right now that the Bruce Lehrmann charges, Lehrmann being the man accused of raping former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins, are tomorrow expected to be dropped. Now, we had already heard that the ACT Director of Public Prosecutions was said to make a statement at 10 a.m. tomorrow about the trial. We were told by Sky that there was going to be, no questions taken, anything like that. But we are now hearing from news.com.au the Bruce Lehrmann charges are expected to be dropped. So that has come in the past few minutes. Also in the last 5 or so minutes, the Restoring Territory Rights Bill has just passed the Senate. That, of course, relates to voluntary euthanasia. Now, of course, it doesn't automatically make it legal for the ACT or NT. It essentially just kind of gives them the option, essentially restoring their right, as the name of the bill suggests. So we're going to follow that for you as well. That's in federal politics. Also, we're now hearing several Labor MPs, including Treasurer Tim Pallas in Victoria, will join the party's socialist left faction. That is coming from The Guardian. Now, what makes that interesting is Pallas was only a few months ago being described as the leader of the Labor right faction. So he's now joining socialist left, apparently, along with some other MPs. That's according to The Guardian. And that goes into what we're talking about regarding the Victorian election. We have now heard in the past few minutes that Labor will retain the seat of Northcote. That's despite early predictions of a Greens win, including some calls on election night on Saturday. Campbell Nome is the Greens candidate there, but it looks like Labor will retain that seat. Greens held it briefly after a by-election. Lydia Thorpe actually won that by-election. Of course, she's now a senator for Victoria, but no, it is looking like Labor will retain Northcote. And so that gives the Greens 4 seats. We're not really expecting them to pick up anything more on the seats that remain. The seats that remain do include Bass, Hastings, Mornington, which is the only seat where a Teal Independent could win right now. Liberals leading just slightly ahead there. And also Pakenham, where the margin was, at last count, 5 votes in favour of the Liberals against Labor there. Of course, regardless of all these seats being decided, you're seeing 7 seats in doubt. You're seeing that on the bottom of your screen. There will be 1 seat still in doubt, of course, being Narrabeen. We're not expecting a supplementary election there after the Nationals candidate Sean Gilchrist died until after Christmas. So expected in January is what we understand. And, of course, the Liberals are looking for a new leader, but that's not so much breaking news right now. Look, a short time ago, we did speak to Tim Reid, Dr. Tim Reid. He is Greens MP for the seat of Brunswick. Now, he was comfortably re-elected on Saturday with a good margin towards him, about an 11% swing, in fact, against on a two-party preferred against Labor, two-candidate preferred, I guess. So Dr. Tim Reid, we discussed what's happening in Northcote, the results generally, and whether this can even be claimed as a Greenslide. I spoke to Dr. Tim Reid a little earlier. Dr. Tim Reid, thanks for joining us. So look, you've comfortably held on to your seat of Brunswick. Obviously, must be pretty happy with that, and also your party picking up an additional seat in Richmond.
Yes, very pleased with the result. We were hoping to get Northcote as well, but we're very happy to increase our representation in the lower house.
I've got to say though, because your party's leader Samantha Ratnam and I think a few others have called this a green slide. Again, looking at the results, and I mean, picking up one seat is, it's fine. It's respectable results, but your statewide primary votes are only up by 0.2%. How is that even remotely a green slide?
Look, things looked a bit more exciting on the night, didn't they, on Saturday night than was revealed in the cold light of Sunday morning. Nevertheless, what we did see was some very impressive results in the seats neighbouring the inner city seats that we already hold. I'm referring to particularly Pascoe Vale and Footscray, where we saw substantial increases in our vote. And for a little while, it was a bit close in Pascoe Vale, a seat where I don't think we knocked on a single door and had no real expectation of winning.
And then, yeah, you mentioned Northcote there, and we only had the results kind of finalised in the last few minutes. Greens conceding there to Labor, and obviously it was a seat you did briefly hold after a by-election a few years ago. But for many analysis, and also even just myself, it seemed like it was the seat your party was the most likely to pick up. Just from your analysis from Brunswick, what do you think, stopped you from getting in? Is it just the Dan factor playing an effect? I think I know he visited the seat quite a few times during the campaign.
One of the biggest things that doesn't get a lot of press coverage is the how important a benefit it is to be an incumbent. As an incumbent MP, I get an office, I get staff, I get a communications budget, and I get that for 4 years. And if I work hard, I should be increasing my vote, and that's what happened in Brunswick. In Northcote, obviously the MP there, Kat Theophanous, was doing the same. Interestingly, her vote barely moved, but it was probably enough for her to hold the seat, and I think that's the biggest advantage that she had.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Brunswick there. You have done really well there, to put it mildly. And I mean, 11% swing towards you, and Labor going down quite significantly on primary votes, but the Liberals not going up, and you going up as well on primary votes is not something to be ashamed about. The other thing, of course, is you've increased your upper house representation. Look like you'll get to 4 seats, and regarding the whole system we have, realistically under a different system you probably would have had about 5 seats or retained those 4 seats you lost last election. So given also the crossbench looks like it could be filled from parties from legalized cannabis to animal justice to all the way down to like One Nation and DLP, you're confident you're going to be able to work with the crossbench? Your party's going to be able to work with that crossbench, and also potentially in the lower house as well, because you're having to work with the current government without being in a minority as you hoped.
Yeah. So look, upper house first. I'm not confident that we'll get 4 seats. It's a possibility, but I think 3 is more likely, and we can only really be confident that we've got 2 at this stage. But given we started with just 1, hey, we're happy. We're going to at least double our upper house numbers and potentially triple. So we're feeling very happy that we're increasing our representation in both houses. And there's no doubt, Leo, the crossbench is going to be more progressive. We're going to have at least 2 legalized cannabis, maybe 3. We could see a socialist in there or reason to get back in. And so we're looking forward to working with that side of the crossbench. There will, however, be some more right-wing MPs. There's going to be a One Nation. I don't see our interests overlapping there very much. Nevertheless, I think that we'll be able to work with the government and with other progressive MPs in the upper house, and I'm looking forward to that.
You mentioned the Victorian Socialists there, and that's the other thing, because they have done, and they have run in far less seats than you guys have, so it's a bit harder on the statewide vote to look at that. But in the seats they have run, like Footscray, for example, Thomastown, they've done really well in some seats where you'd expect the Greens to kind of be the major third party or even up on the two candidate preferred thing there. That includes in seats like Melbourne, Richmond. They haven't done too badly. Of course, you've won Richmond, of course. But given that, we have this spectrum of progressive parties and the Victorian Socialists are also a new party, it does seem like, the vote, from my view, it might start splitting, and it looks like the Vic Socialists are continuing to grow. Are you worried you're going to start to lose votes to them? Because again, they haven't really come close to winning a lower house seat, but the fact they're third on primary votes is actually really impressive for any non-minor party that's not yourselves, non-major party, excuse me.
No, no, Leo, you're spot on. And I have to take my hat off to the Socialists. They have lifted their vote. They've worked really hard, did a lot of door knocking, and so a big field campaign, and they do have something to show for it. And I should just point out that they almost got as many votes as the Liberals in Brunswick. When I last looked, and it's still moving, of course, the Socialists were on about 8.5%, and the Liberals were on about 10.5% in Brunswick. So
that's still about the results right now, yeah.
Yeah, it's an impressive result, and they should be proud of that. And look, as for whether I'm worried about that, not particularly. Almost all Socialist voters preferenced me second, and that obviously contributed to my two-party result. And I just think that the parliamentary ecosystem, the political ecosystem in Victoria is getting more interesting with some of these progressive, smaller parties. And I think, we should work together. And I would be very happy if we saw a socialist in the upper house.
Just quickly, two final questions on the general results. We called this state election before 8:30. It was, for a Labor majority after all those predictions of a Labor minority, and I think hopes of a minority government from your party. Why do you think that was, that Victorians have just overwhelmingly, gone back to the government? And there are plenty of reasons you can argue for that, but surely the expectations was not like that. It was just so fast, and they're picking up seats, Labor. They're actually picking up quite a few seats to the point where the Liberals might have a net gain of, nothing.
Yeah. No, you're right. So I think there are a couple of factors. First of all, the Liberals really shot themselves in the foot on a number of occasions with, far right wing or religious extremist MPs, and so that's one issue. Plus, they had their trying to hide the donations issue, and so too often the media about the Liberals was about their problems rather than about their policies. And secondly, Labor, just after their big result, was sitting on a huge war chest of public funding, and they have a big spend over the past 4 years on advertising. Some of it government funded, some of it their own, and so they've got huge resources. The other thing was that there was publicity put about, particularly from Cos Samaras and Redbridge via The Age, arguing that Labor was in trouble, but it was really just from one source, a former Labor Party official, Cos Samaras, really. And I think that the idea was there to get the message out that Labor was in trouble, so people didn't, experiment with voting for anyone else like the Greens. And a lot of the media fell for it. And but we weren't terribly surprised when, Labor got the result they did, bearing in mind that they hold a lot of their seats by big margins. And it was the Liberals that held most of the marginal seats.
And just finally on the Liberals, right now, obviously they're facing that leadership challenge where you've got, the moderate John Pizzuto, and then also after Richard Royden and Ryan Smith both pulled out, you have Brad Batten is really the only other contester here. Now, we know after the federal election, a lot of people said they've got to be more moderate to claim back some of those teal seats, and then they went with Peter Dutton, who I don't think anyone would really describe as a moderate coalition MP. But here in Victoria, we've got, some different circumstances here. What direction do you think the Liberals should go in now, given, of course, they're facing even a coalition split? And do you think they will actually go in that direction once we see the new leader, whoever that may be?
Well, the Liberals have shown some signs of being able to read the room at last, but they definitely need to keep doing that. And I'm particularly referring to climate change. For, over a decade there, they've been climate denialists, and they've been very slow to come to the party regarding climate action. But recently, and in fact, just after the federal election, the state Victorian Liberals announced climate targets, greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, that were a fraction more ambitious even than the Victorian Labor government. The problem is you can't just announce something a couple of months out from an election and expect people to believe that you're going to follow through with that. So I think they need to improve their climate credentials, as well as come up with some other policies that are credible and as progressive as the Victorian voters are.
I think this next parliament is in both houses going to be an absolutely fascinating one. But we really appreciate your time, Dr. Tim Reid, member for Brunswick. Congrats on your re-election. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Leo.
Dr. Tim Reid there, Greens MP for Brunswick in the Victorian lower house, speaking to me a bit earlier about claims of a Greenslide in this state election, but also what he makes of the general results and how the Liberals are going, and also, could he potentially be losing votes to the Vic Socialists? Could his party potentially be losing those votes to the Vic Socialists, those left-wing progressive parties? So great to have a chat there, and if you missed any of that, will be available on demand. Look, we just want to continue following that breaking news that we brought you at the top of the hour regarding the Restoring Territory Rights Bill. As we mentioned, that has passed the Senate. What it essentially means is the NT and the ACT will have the power to pass their own voluntary assisted dying, voluntary euthanasia laws. It doesn't automatically make it legal, but it gives them the power to make it legal if they want. Essentially, as the name suggests, it restores their rights to do so. The ACT Legislative Assembly, and of course the ACT government, there is a Labor-Greens coalition, but they are saying that it'll be looked at in 2023. So that's what we're hearing from the ACT. Nothing from the NT yet that I've seen, but we expect something too. And if not, again, a 2023 move is probably likely there. Given we are now in December, can you believe that we are now in December? So a lot happening. But the other also breaking news that we were following was regarding Labor factions. We'd heard that a number of senior Labor ministers, including Treasurer Tim Pallas in Victoria, have defected to the Socialist Left faction. Now, we're not exactly sure why at the moment. Treasurer Tim Pallas was described as the leader of Labor Right. The Labor Right faction. So obviously this move is a bit of a, jumping ship, some might say. But also we're hearing it's a total of 7 Labor MPs. 3 of them belong to former Minister and former MP, now DLP candidate for Northern Metro, and he might get back in, by the way, Adam Somurek's Moderates faction. So at least 3 had come from them. You would assume the remaining 4 had come from Labor Right, or were, if there were any, they were unaligned. But that is a defection to the Socialist Left faction. Now, the Socialist Left faction, Labor Left, however you want to call it in Victoria, essentially controls, I wouldn't use the word control, but essentially the 2 main people, the leader, Daniel Andrews, and the deputy leader, Jacinta Allen, are both from that faction. What's interesting about that is that they are both from the same faction. We know federally we have Labor Left in Albanese, we have Labor Right in Miles. Leader, deputy. We had, with James Melito, he was on the right, so it was left-right. Then we had both left, and again, Tim Pallas said, as the leader, I'm quoting him, or paraphrasing at the very least, he said, as the leader of Labor Right, I'm happy with that. He said that when that arrangement was announced a few months ago, so that it confirmed his Labor Right, but now he's gone to the Socialist Left. So again, we're not sure the reasons why. Lots of speculation right now. Some saying there's some kind of quota rule regarding it. Again, that's all speculation. We'll keep following that story for you right now. Keep you leaving your questions for us right now, because we're going to keep covering this for you. Again, just keep looking at the Victorian election right now. You're seeing on the monitor of your screen the seat counter. We have 51 ALP, 26 Coalition, 4 Greens, 0 others, 7 in doubt, and one of those in doubt includes Narracombe, which will very likely not go to a supplementary election until January. In the meantime, those in doubt seats include Bass, Hastings, Mornington, and Preston. So they are all still in doubt. It's looking like Labor could pick up potentially 2 of those seats, as in, not just retain it. They could pick up 2, which would mean Liberal losses. Now, Northcote was the one retained only a few hours ago, as we just discussed with Dr. Tim Reid there, Greens for Brunswick. But then also, you have yesterday Hawthorn, which was a 3-way race. We had Labor incumbent John Kennedy, who barely won the seat, from Liberal John Pizzuto in 2018. John Pizzuto contesting it for the Liberals this year, also facing a 2-candidate preferred challenge from independent Melissa Lowe. That 2-candidate preferred challenge was what we saw in those results, and that is what has indeed, played out. John Pizzuto winning against Teal independent Melissa Lowe and incumbent Labor MP John Kennedy. By the way, it's interesting to note Lowe and Kennedy were almost even, and Kennedy was ahead at times on, and I think he might still be, actually. Doesn't matter regarding preferences, but otherwise Kennedy doing actually not too badly in primary votes, gone down by about 11% from mid-ish 30s, but regardless, he has certainly gone down there, as you would expect when you have that Teal independent challenger. We saw that with the Greens in the seat, given they had done pretty well in Kooyong federally. Julian Burnside was close at times to beating Josh Frydenberg back in 2018, but of course Monique Ryan, Teal independent, did defeat Josh Frydenberg at this election. So we will keep following that for you, because it's it's those developments that it seems like it could take a while to actually confirm. We'll keep following that for you, and also what's happening in the upper house as well. But meanwhile, to our random political party of the week, as chosen as usual by our Patreon subscribers. You can sign up, by the way, for just $4 a month. Patreon.com/SIXNewsAU. The one chosen with about 50% of the votes, no preferences distributed, by the way, was the Jackie Lambie Network, founded in 2015 by, take a guess, Jackie Lambie. So essentially, she was elected 2013 election as a Palmer United senator. Palmer United, of course, being now the United Australia Party. By the way, I don't have vision for you, so enjoy my face for the next few minutes. I'm sure you're not complaining. But Jackie Lambie, she was elected for the Palmer United Party as a senator. She left that party, she became an independent, but then in 2015 she formed the Jackie Lambie Network. Now that's essentially because she needs a party to get back into the Senate, because an independent winning, a pure independent, not running under any party, it's almost unheard of. I think Nick Xenophon did, but then of course he formed the Nick Xenophon team, which as we all know is now Centre Alliance. But the Jackie Lambie Network, it's contested Tasmanian elections, it's contested federally, and this year it actually got its second ever senator at the same time. So serving with Lambie is Tammy Terrell. Tammy Terrell defeating Eric Abetz, Liberal senator, who was effectively demoted to 3rd out of 3 on the Liberal Party's Tasmanian Senate ticket. That was this year, by the way, in May. So the JLN, it formed around the same time the Glenn Lazarus team. Another ex-Palmer United senator did. Of course, he did not get back in. Other parties similar, as we mentioned, Nick Xenophon team, now Centre Alliance, but also David Pocock, which was formed by David Pocock, who is a current David Pocock senator, that being David Pocock. But yeah, that's one example. There's also been a couple others, especially when Independence New South Wales Legislative Council has this a lot. I think another independence group, Elizabeth Farrell, name escapes me right now, apologies, was formed as a group to contest, unregistered, by the way. It's too late to register any form of party, but kind of a bit like what they have in the council. Lots of registered council parties. Your Northern Beaches independent team, Shoalhaven independent, etc., etc. The list kind of goes on there. So Jackie Lambie Network, kind of one of those examples of a party named after a person. Canada's Australian Party is actually another example there. They kind of have a weird example though, because they barely contest seats. Yes, in the Queensland elections, federally, it really just is for Bob Catter, who's no longer even the party leader. That's down to his son and Queensland State MP, Robbie Catter. So I think they contested the Senate in one ungrouped guy. I genuinely don't remember. But really, they don't contest much, if we're brutally honest here. There's a couple other examples. One that didn't get in, Drew Pavlou Democratic Alliance, which was formed by, take a guess, Drew Pavlou, also trying to get him up in the Senate. So yeah, you see these parties a lot. There's many more examples. I don't even have off the top of my head right now. You could argue Palmer United was one, but he was in the upper house, was kind of a name thing there. Also, they had a whole dispute with the Uniting, or was it the Unite Australia Party? I don't remember, something like that. But either way, definitely those kind of results that not the results, but those kind of expectations in terms of how that's formed. So the Jackie Lambie Network, going back to what we were originally talking about, formed in 2015, continuing to this day, currently sitting with 2 senators. That's equal with there's a huge example, Pauline Hanson's One Nation. So that is the Jackie Lambie Network for you. So look, thank you very much for tuning into SpinCheck Live tonight. Of course, as always, there is more news 24/7 on our website right now, SIXNewsAU.com, and on social media for you, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Elite. Just search SIXNewsAU to find us. We'll have more news throughout the evening and overnight for you. And of course, in case you're wondering, also at early Sunday morning for the Socceroos. And by the way, this is second last episode of SpinCheck Live for the year. Next week will be our last as we kind of wrap it up. But of course, 6 News 24/7, our coverage will continue, just not on this program for the next few weeks. So you don't have to worry about that. I'm sure everyone's happy to hear that we'll continue going 24/7 and we're just never ending our coverage for you, because we do this for you. But thank you very much for tuning in to SpinCheck Live. As I said, I am Leonardo Puglisi. Thank you very much for your company. I'll say it again. Have a great night.